Shio, I'm Ash.
I'm Sheyahshe.
I'm Maggie, and we are the hosts of We Are Resilient. The MMIW movement stands for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, and it's a movement that advocates for ending violence against Native women.
The idea for this podcast came about last year after the last May 5th MMIW Day of Awareness. Once that day was over, it was kind of like everybody went back to regular life, and I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. And me, Ash, and Maggie all listened to True Crime Podcasts, and I thought, this would be a really good idea to kind of get a way to share these stories to a larger audience. And I was like, somebody should really do this. And then one day I was like, well, why can't I? So I talked to Maggie, I talked to Ash, and they were definitely on board. And We Are Resilient came to life.
We've had an overwhelming amount of support locally and nationally from so many people. And I think that helps spark our fire to keep going and to be resilient in sharing these stories. Because sometimes it does get hard.
So this can happen to anyone. We're all susceptible to these tragic circumstances because, again, the statistic is the third leading cause of death for us is murder. So one of the things we wanted to highlight was the fact that MMIW does happen. It happens here on the koala boundary, and it is our responsibility with this podcast to report on what we can and to spread the awareness however we can.
When we look into these cases, something that is really evident is that a lot of these cases stem from places of poverty or places of really high domestic violence rates. We know as Native people that we are more susceptible to violence in our lifetime than other ethnicities. And a lot of that stems back to kind of systemic issues and intergenerational traumas that our people have endured. So it is really eye-opening to see this rhetoric continue today, because it seems like that would be something that we had moved past at this point, but I do still think it's really relevant in a lot of the cases we cover.
Selena Not Afraid was one that stuck with me the most. It was one of the first stories that I covered, and because she was so young and she carried so many things about her. She learned her dances, her language. She was just a young girl that went missing. And the circumstances around her story they just don't add up. And working with young ladies, I see her in those ladies. And I never want them to experience something like that. Because when we lose one of our Indigenous sisters, we lose what they know of their tribe, their language, their traditions, their medicines. And those things now more than ever are more invaluable and so precious to each and every tribe out there. So I think Selena Not Afraid was probably one of the hardest hitting stories because she was just so young and her family never got answers.
So I think part of the importance of us as Cherokee women doing this podcast is that there are a lot of local cases that even we weren't aware of until we started recording. There's a lot of cases that are still just kind of out there with no answers, and there's not a whole lot of information. Personally, it's been a really impactful experience just looking into a lot of these cases, because I didn't realize how many cases that we had locally, and I also didn't realize how many of these cases stem from domestic or intimate partner violence, and that kind of goes hand in hand in a lot of Native communities. So I think that an important piece of what we're doing is bringing back these names to the community so people, remember who they were and maybe think about kind of what happened to them and how they can prevent that from happening in the future.
As we researched a lot of these episodes, we've all mentioned that there's a lot of intimate partner violence that occurs in a lot of these cases. One case that really, really touched home for me was the story about Ashlea Aldrich. And I covered that case, and it dealt a lot with domestic violence and the things that she's gone through with her ex-partner. And it really hit home for me as a survivor of domestic violence. A lot of the circumstances that she was in was circumstances that I was in myself. And it was really scary, but it also really puts more significance on why this podcast is important, why this awareness is important, and that we have a voice and our voice matters. And it's time that we end this epidemic. It's time that we stop domestic violence and intimate partner violence, and we be the powerful Indigenous women we are.
We wanted to do something productive to get the word out there because these women are important. They're somebody's mother, their sister, daughter, and they matter. And just because they go missing and there's no closure or justice to their cases doesn't mean that we shouldn't share their stories.
We hope by doing this podcast and raising awareness that we can encourage people to talk about this epidemic throughout the year.
We hope that you tune into our podcast and keep bringing awareness to this epidemic that affects all of us all across Indian nations. Or you can send us a message on Facebook or Instagram at We Are Resilient Podcast.
We hope that you guys keep listening to the podcast and listening to these stories. These stories are hard to hear. A lot of them are very tragic, they're unfair, and should make you angry. These women are more than just the tragic circumstances that happen to them. And to our Indigenous brothers and sisters out there, stay strong and remember, we are resilient.